whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hia ki ana te ata kura, he huka, he tio, he hauhu. Nō reira tūturu, whakawhiti, whakamaua, kia tīna. Haumi e hui e, tai ki e.
Environment Network Manawatu is a coordinating organisation. We have more than 40 member groups. They're based from Dannevirke down to Foxton Beach and up towards the Rangitikei. Each group has their own projects and initiatives. Our role as Environment Network Manawatu is to enhance the communication, coordination and cooperation between these groups.
We're constantly working to get word out about what our member groups are doing and to help our member groups support each other. There's huge diversity in the network. Our members are involved in conservation, community food, recycling, education, sustainable transport and much, much more. From backyard beekeeping through to large-scale community consciousness raising events such as the Real Earth Environmental Film Festival and the Manawatu Harvest Festival.
All year round there's a working bee for someone who wants to just show up and dip their toes in it, and we can let people know when and where those are. If individuals want to take a longer commitment, there are any number of organizations that could use more strength in their leadership or particular skills, graphic design, writing, all sorts of skills, not specifically environmental ones, can bolster up an organization. Beyond individuals, we have organizations that would be happy to have a business sponsor them in some way, whether that's having employees coming along on a regular basis for working bees or providing some sort of funding. We have opportunities for churches and clubs and service groups to get involved with particular projects. In those cases, it's pretty much a matter of talking one-on-one and seeing what sort of matches we can make.
When we network, we extend our reach into the community, we get more done, and we're more effective than we would be if we were working in isolation. Our network has a large number of organisations or groups that are involved in conservation and biodiversity initiatives. Some of those are small community groups, some are the branches of national organisations, and some are large organisations such as DOC and Fish and Game. Each of these groups is working to protect and enhance our Indigenous biodiversity and also to extend it. Some of our members also work to get people out into nature. Other member groups run conservation-related talks. Both of these sorts of activities help people to better understand the value of what we're conserving.
Forest and Bird Manawatu branch is a member of the National Society, and Forest and Bird was set up for conservation of our native plants and animals nearly 100 years ago. Kiwi Conservation Club is a younger version of Forest and Birds. Forest and Bird became involved in Waitoitoi Park because we were looking for a place to have our energies, devote our energies locally. We looked around about and saw that Waitoitoi Park was established with a lovely piece of bush, but it had opportunities for growth for what we were interested in doing, or planting trees.
This park is really important to people that live in this area because it's very close to the river. Last year we had 320 children went through identifying plants and appreciating what's happening in our neighbourhood.
What we've been doing here today is weeding. It's not a very exciting thing to do. It's not a very sexy part of the whole revegetation projects. Some of these trees we haven't been back to for a little while, and so they've been pulled down by convolvulus and other big weeds, and so it's a vital part is to get back frequently, to release them, to let them grow, to weed out the plants that are crowding them out.
We're absolutely delighted that the Muslim community has chosen to be, come and help with our projects.
Islamic Association got involved with this organization in 2012 when Islamic Association was doing Islam Awareness Week, and our theme was Islam and environment. And one of our community member was trying to find some project we can do around the city, and we found this group, and they were doing fantastic job around Palmerston North area. And instead of doing something separate, we just joined them. In our belief, it says that doing something in environment, like if you grow something, fruit or veggies or anything, and if anyone gets benefited from it, it's kind of charity. So this is every Muslim's duty to do something for keep environment clean and do something, planting or something which others can benefit.
Forest and Bird has been a founding member of E&M, and it's vital to belong to this umbrella group because it's a way of keeping in touch with all the other groups in the area, and it gives us a whole host of volunteers.
This site originally was a clay and shingle pit. The clay from the pit fed the Hoffman kiln up on Featherston Street. Once the clay industry went into decline, it became a shingle quarry, and through the 1950s most of the roading shingle for the major jobs around the Manawatu came out of here. By the mid-60s the site fell into disrepair. It was used for dumping, it became an absolute wasteland, so there was this 6.5 hectare hole in the ground that was just an absolute mess. Eventually the council put forward a proposal that it was used for motorised go-karts, and the community at that point said absolutely no way. So the poor old council threw its hands up in horror and said, well, if you don't want that, what do you want? And there was community consultation, and it came back that people wanted it developed into a passive recreation space. They wanted a park, they wanted native species planted in here, and that's how the project began. Community ownership's really important in this area of Palmerston North. There's been so much input from the community to it. We're not having a lot of problem with issues like vandalism, but you'll get things like that people that know that you're involved in the project, they'll say, oh, I was taking a walk through the park the other day and I noticed some plants had been pulled up. So I went home and I got my shovel and I've put them back in for you. And that's what the community ownership's about. We have a huge diversity of volunteers. We've had everything from a 6-year-old boy right through to some of our older committee members who are in their mid-80s. Basically, we have anyone and everyone who's interested in the project, and what our job is to tailor the jobs we've got available to the abilities of the person we've got. We have people that raise plants on our behalf. We have people that will come and plant. We have people that are more interested in weeding. Really, it's a matter of if people are interested, it doesn't matter whether they've got half an hour or half a year, we'll have something that they can help out with. Networking in communities for a project like this is absolutely essential, because if you haven't got that community input and community ownership of the project, it's actually very difficult to achieve what you set out to achieve. And the other thing that it does is that it enables groups that ordinarily wouldn't get involved to be involved.
One source of our identity as Environment Network Manawatu is the Manawatu River. Near where the river starts, we have Te Kauru, based in Dannevirke. At the river mouth, we have Save Our River Trust and the Manawatu Estuary Group. Along the whole stretch of the river, we have WECA, the Water and Environmental Care Association, keeping an eye on advocacy, accountability and water quality. In between, we have other groups focusing on a smaller section of the river, possibly looking at things like erosion, water quality and planting.
Te Aotearoa is part of Tāne Nui Arangi Manawatu Incorporated, and its main function is environmental and cultural education on behalf of the iwi. Back in 2012 we signed up the Rangitane North Island Fish Plan, which is an aquaculture venture to commercialise what is currently a prohibited fishery. The reason why we chose the eel fishery is that They are a special species to iwi. They're solely our species of significance. Our hopes and aspirations for not only our fisheries project but for the outcome of our fish plan, which has a 5-year duration before it's reviewed, is that we can get our fisheries, both marine and freshwater, back to a level where they can provide a daily healthy staple for rangitani whānau. There is the role there for the wider community in terms of just generally improving water quality and habitat around the river edges, because it's not only eels that are in decline but the wider native fish assemblage. In terms of rangitani and their connection to the Manawatu River as their awa wairua, about 800 years ago, Whātonga sailed up the Manawatu River to the Manawatu Gorge, or Te Apiti, and he sent his lieutenants over to bring the iwi into the Manawatu. So we have a whakatauki that captures our vision for the revitalisation of our environmental elements. I te tāpiri nui a Whātonga, me te tāpiri nui a kupe. I tangata rangitani ka ora anō. So the translation of that is, from the great lands of rangitani, may the people be sustained. And it relates to not only the water quality and the food that we can gather from that environment, but also encouraging a wider engagement with the community.
Green Corridor is an organisation of volunteers here in the region that work on green projects, primarily planting trees and populating areas where I guess the urban development's got quite close to nature, and if we can restore some of those native areas back to the plants that were there years ago, then it also makes for a pleasant environment between civilization and the great wilds. Rico became aware of Green Corridors in 2010, and we became involved as a sponsor in 2011. We'd spoken to members of the Palmerston City Council and Sustainability Manawatu and the Green Corridors team, and thought it would be a good fit for us. For Rico, it was a two-step process. One was to provide some sponsorship to purchase trees and plants, and secondly to have an annual planting day where we could actually get out there with our people and actually make a difference by planting in those areas. And we've been involved in sponsoring the organisation now for the last 3 years. One of the beautiful things about being involved with something like Green Corridors is you can take friends and family, your kids, your customers along over more than just one period. They could come back in a couple of years' time and see the progress that you've done in a planting area, or particularly for us in the Manawatu, we have a connection to the river, and if all the areas feeding into the waterways are clean and green and environmentally sustainable, then that's actually something that affects us on a day-to-day basis in our own communities. So for us, that's kind of the payback long term, is to be involved and to see something through to the end. From a corporate point of view, Rico is proud of the fact that we are involved in Green Corridors. It's rewarding. We'd love to see more corporates involved. We have got this river that flows through our region that does need to be cleaned up, and this is one of the areas where we are able to actually contribute to cleaning up those areas around the region.
The Environment Network Manawatu also includes a number of member groups whose primary concern is a healthy urban environment. Some focus on advocacy, such as the Sustainable Cities group. We have other groups that are involved in recycling and sustainable transport. A great example is the Green Bike Trust. Its volunteers develop new job skills while repairing old bicycles and getting them back on the streets. We'd love to see an urban environment where people are more conscious of what they consume, where they fully embrace the challenge and possibility of zero waste, and where we have urban design and strategy that makes it easy for people to make green choices.
The Arts Recycling Centre is like a repository for potentially useful materials. We are here really to capture things that would probably normally go to a landfill. So materials that can't be recycled conventionally. We've got lots of fabric, we've got lots of papers, lots of pieces of wood, lots of just things that can be repurposed. There's lots of ways you can help arc out. One of them would be to bring your stuff here. We just take donations of materials all the time, telling people about us coming in and volunteering. So volunteering at any capacity. We need people to do things like graphic design. We've got someone who's making some posters for us. That kind of stuff's always really useful. People who want to run workshops. People who are just interested to come and doing some sorting. People love sorting. It's funny, you know, there are volunteers that come here for the sheer joy of being able to sort out a box of fabric. I think really what the Arts Recycling Centre teaches children is that if you think laterally about materials, then you can use them for a plethora of things, you know. It teaches people to be creative. It teaches people to use the things that are immediately available to them in different ways. The other really interesting thing that I find being here, and I think the other volunteers find as well, is that we realise that the world we live in is loaded full of stuff, and that we have so many things, and you know, we're rich with materials really, and I think that people forget that.
Cycle Aware Manawatu is one of a number of local cycling advocacy groups around the country, and we are there to promote cycling for everyday journeys, cycling for transport. Sometimes the term that's used is utility travel. There are lots of things that people can do to get involved in promoting sustainable transport. They can start looking at their own journeys, and they can work with other people in their home, their family, their network of friends, and start walking, cycling, using buses together, because that can be a lot of fun. These things are enjoyable, they can be very convenient, obviously very cost effective, they're good for our health, and they're good for the environment.
E&M also has a number of groups who have come together around the idea of community resilience. Often these groups are very focused on food production, like community orchards and community gardens. A couple of them, like transition fielding and sustainable rangatike, are very inspired and informed by the Transition Towns movement, which asks questions about how we can best deal with issues like peak oil and economic downturn and climate change in a way where we as people connected with our living environments can be independent, can look after each other, and can own our food networks.
Community Fruit Harvest is a community organisation run by volunteers who offer to go into people's backyards and orchards sometimes to pick any surplus fruit and produce that the family themselves can't use and give it to other people in the community who will use it. So it's reducing waste in their backyards and helping others in need. Most people volunteer as pickers. As picking opportunities come up, as people call me and say they've got excess fruit and surplus produce, I pick a volunteer who I know is local, and then usually people just take responsibility from there. I heard about the group through a newspaper article. My husband Simon picked up the article and said, "Oh, you could do that. You always talk about fruit that is falling from people's trees." It really resonated with me, the idea of not just taking the fruit for ourselves, but being able to share it out with others in the community. One of the organisations we work with is the Pātikitiki Library in Highbury. My volunteers deliver fruit to their library. They offer the fruit to the children, and anything that gets left over they give out on the sharing table for the community to take home. So it's really local, and it's really serving a need in the community, and it's giving the kids really fresh, wholesome fruit.
Recaps the Society for the Resilience and Engagement of the Communities of Ashurst and Pohongona. It's about setting up ways so that if things were cut off, we could be sustainable, resilient, we can look after ourselves. We spotted this land and thought we could put an orchard down here. So we got money from Meridian Community Trust. So we've laid all this out, and the orchard's been in here a couple of years. We've got community gardens just going in the back of the Ashurst Community Library. We planted the first garden beds today. There's a herb spiral there. We do education, so there's gardening and composting and fermented foods. All the things that our elders used to do, growing gardens, growing around food and making us more self-sustainable. So many people now just go to the supermarket, they don't realise where their own food comes from. So this is a part of getting back to basics again and learning, well actually if there's a global financial crisis that hits again and we can't export stuff, we'll have to grow our own gardens, and we've lost the knowledge of how to do that in a lot of cases. Ashurst is a fairly close community. There's only about 3,000 people here. We just put the word out and they come and help us out. And so the scouts are doing this is part of their conservation badge. They're cleaning out the stream of all the weed and all the built up stuff that's slowing the stream down. We get the advantage of being able to make compost out of it because it's green matter and water that goes into the compost. So everyone wins out of it. The Ashurst Action Group and the RECAP are both members of the Environment Network Manawatu. Why do we want to be part of a wider network? Well, because we have the knowledge of the other groups that are there. Groups like Plant the Plate, which works with schools, Super Grands, which has also got help for people with gardens. So that's all part of being resilient and sustainable. And that's what E&M's about, and that's what we're about as RECAP.
The Environment Network Manawatu is our member groups, and our member groups are made up of the people that are out there doing stuff. They're teaching, they're doing advocacy, they're organising events, and they're doing the practical work on the ground. There's always room for one more person to have the opportunity to share their skills, their knowledge, their experience, their passion, their personality as part of that group. By individuals connecting with each other in this way, we do have the ability to make a difference to this region, and we also have the opportunity to get to know each other and to build community.
I often think of the Environment Network Manawatu as a backbone that's comprised of all of our member groups, but we can't do what we want to do for the environment alone, and it's the whole community that's the muscle that's going to take us in the direction that we want to go. When we can link a business to be a sponsor or a supporter of one of our group projects, or when we can bring in a scout group or a school group to participate in Working Bees, any time that we can get an organization from the outside community working with our member groups, it just expands the reach of that member group and the strength of their project and their sustainability.
Environment Network Manawatu has a vision for how we'd like the Manawatu to be. We'd like to be a place with clean air, clean water, valleys planted in forest, native birds in abundance, easy access to locally grown organic food, an easy way to move around cities with bikes and public transport, and so that people can have their needs met in harmony with the environment. To do this, we need more than just our 40 member groups. We need to involve everybody in the region. We'd love to have everybody in the region taking one small step towards making the Manawatu an environmentally sustainable society with a resilient future.
Ka pine a ko e au, ki te pine o te aroha, ki te pine e kore nei e waikura e. Tai te mu tai pari, tai hoa e haere, kia mutu taku riringi roi mata e. Ai, kia ora hui hui mai tātou katoa i te neira.